Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, June 6th, 2022. I'm your host, Tristan, and hopefully my internet will keep its shit together for 2 hours. Hello! How is everyone doing? See, we've got some people from the usual crew in the chat. Very nice to see all of you here. Very good. All right. So, introduce myself. My name is Tristan. I'm the host of the YouTube channel Step Back, and I'm a co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens, a podcast where we debunk ancient astronaut claims and pseudo-archaeology and pseudo-history and UFO stuff. You can find Step Back at stepbackhistory.com, or you're probably likely, if you're watching this on YouTube, on my channel right now. And It's Probably Not Aliens is found at propsnotaliens.com or on any podcast platform that you like to use. Very cool. I stream on Mondays at noon, which is what you're doing right now. I go for a couple hours, and it just started. And I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at patreon.com, or you can support my work for as little as 84 cents a month with a yearly subscription by going to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and get videos a little bit early. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other little side benefits. I try to make my Patreon the best value for $1 that you can get. So I have a few perks for different tiers, but I try to give out a weekly update on what's going on with my production schedule on Fridays. That goes out to all patrons. I have a weekly Q&A video that I do that goes out to patrons, all patrons, and asking questions is part of that as well. I also, and then, early videos and all that kind of stuff. So, good stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. But patreon.com/stepbackhistory is where you can do that. Or you can go to my Twitch, or if you have Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime is a way to give one free subscription per month to a creator. If you choose me, I get a little bit of money at no extra cost to you. It's all baked into your Amazon Prime membership, so if you do that, be very grateful. Lastly, if you do have a little bit of cash, anything like a Twitch subscription or bits or super chats or anything like that are very welcome as well. They help keep me doing this and keep me in business and all that kind of stuff. So please, if don't of course do anything that you can't comfortably afford. But if you have some dollars to spare, I would love to have it. My latest video came out last Monday, and it was about the police and their connection to the far right and all that kind of stuff. Seems to be going pretty well. It's a very popular video. It's my most popular video since September, so I would say that's a pretty big success. And my next video, I actually haven't decided what it's about yet. I will be figuring that out sometime today, probably. The idea that's floating in my head right now, I'm not 100% sure, but it would be making a reaction video or a response video to Netflix's new show, The G Word, the new Adam Conover show produced by the Obamas. But I'm not married to that, and I have to go and look at my analytics and stuff like that to see if there's something that is more important or more, more pressing on my time or on my limited time resources these days. Weren't I working on a video on the Russian Federation? Yes, that is I'm still working on it. It's a longer term project. It's just that it's definitely going to take a lot longer than I thought, and I have about 10 hours a week that I can work on Step Back at the moment. So I need to, if I just work on this Russian video, it'll be months before you see another Step Back video. So I'm just going to, take 1 week out of every 2 weeks to put together something a little quicker so that you guys can, keep these things going along. Is Mia out partying? Mia only comes on the show every other week now. That's she needs to get more caught up on work and everything like that. So yeah. If you wish to submit questions to the stream, probably future streams. I've got a bunch of questions right now, but who knows? When it's just me, I'd go through questions a lot faster. There's a link here where you can submit questions to be added to my little question database for streams. So very cool. Go do that. And if this is your first time watching, please make yourself known in the chat. Please say hello, because this is it's really great when we have new people. We have a very supportive community, really great people. So I would love to see who is tuning in for the first time. Yeah. All right. How is it's Sweden's National Day today? Oh, I did not know that. It's pretty cool, I guess. Canada's is July 1st, so we still got a little bit, but I don't know what I'm going to do to celebrate it, if I'm going to celebrate it at all, because it's kind of controversial now. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I am extremely... I'm a little bit anemic. So I'm experiencing, I'm taking all those iron pills, and but I'm experiencing the symptoms of anemia, which are things like being tired all the time and having a headache all the time. So that's fun. That's very fun. I love that part of my life these days. So yeah. Lots of good questions. Lots of things to talk through and have a chat about. So let's dive in, shall we? Everyone in the UK has been fucking the Queen. Yeah, I've been told that the Platinum Jubilee is quite the shit show. I'm not watching it, of course. I would find that boring. All right. Let's see. What is the first question we have? This seems like it's a little... Could racism and bigotry be ended in the southeastern United States by forcing whites into re-education camps and having their women and children forcibly raped, just like the Soviet Army did in Germany? Yeah, not going to recommend that. All right. To what extent is periodization useful in Germany? I feel like it risks overly simplifying things, but at the same time, it helps to be able to more easily discuss the past. Oh. Yes, this is part of the weirdness of the history profession. There's this term in like historiography, which is sort of the study of history. The history of history, if you will. It's that, do I even vet the questions? Usually, I depending upon how busy I am, basically. This morning, I did not have a ton of time to sift through stuff. Anyways, on this question about periodization, so there's this whole concept in the philosophy of history that's about how there's a clear difference between history and the past. Which I know sounds... like a weird thing to say, but the past is a phenomenological thing. It is a thing that it is the past as it existed. It no longer exists. It is destroyed. There is no way to bring it back. There is no time machines. It happened already. History is the genre of study and writing of humans trying to understand what happened in the past. And it'll always be a sort of imperfect reflection of things that happened. It'll always be an abstraction because we can't really describe everything that happened in the past because a lot of it just doesn't survive today. And we're never going to get it perfect. The other aspect of this that is important to mention is that humans remember things in particular ways. And one of the things that we do is that we're very into categories. This is sort of the way that human brains like to organize information. We're very categorical. And having things put into discrete boxes is very clearly like the way that we better understand concepts, because to really just understand, like, our brains are not capable of understanding phenomenological reality just like perfectly. We have to sort of build abstractions to turn them and compress them into memories, basically. And periodization sort of fits this aspect. Periodization is basically like in history taking different periods of the past and saying, hey, this is the period, like in my area of history, you've got the Civil War era that ends in 1871, and then you've got sort of you got the Civil War, which ends in 1865. Then you've got like the Reconstruction movement, sort of 1865 to 1871. Then you've got like sort of age of imperialism, or whatever you want to call it, in America, sort of late 1800s, early 1900s. And then you've got like the Progressive era, which sort of usually gets described like kind of like when Teddy Roosevelt takes power, essentially, right up until the backlash that sort of happens in the 20s, where you get like a string of like laissez-faire Republican presidents, usually starting with Taft, I want to say. Maybe not Taft. Sort of Republicans who follow Woodrow Wilson after World War One, which then sort of then after that is sort of like the New Deal era, where you have like you get it, you get what I'm talking about. So a lot of, why was that called the Progressive era? The Progressive era of like the early 20th century in the U.S., where you've got like the presidencies. It's basically like Teddy Roosevelt through Woodrow Wilson. And that is because that was a period where a bunch of social movements and a lot of laws for the protecting of workers and stuff like that all got passed. That was the period where a whole lot of unionization efforts took place. And that was the period where America got the 8-hour workday, the 5-day work week. And it was just like when a lot of like these sort of like protections and laws and a lot of like big Gilded Age monopolies got broken up and like all that kind of stuff. So it's considered the Progressive era because it was when it's based on like these groups of people who are called the progressives, who took a radically different idea to politics than existed before, which was basically this sort of social science driven idea of politics that believed that the problems of society are understandable and can be addressed and solved. While a lot of presidents before, or a lot of governments before, kind of thought that society was not really you weren't able to make society better. You just sort of managed it in different ways. And so that kind of changed in a lot of ways. That's Progressive era. But the thing is that for all of the things that we think are good, all of the workers' rights and stuff like that, there was also other sort of experiments in the same field that were not good. This is progressives were the people who were into eugenics, and progressives were the people who were into prohibition and stuff like that. So prohibition was considered a feminism issue when it was passed, that kind of stuff. So that's the Progressive era. Anyways, but a lot of ink gets spilled in history trying to disseminate when different periods end, and we always are redefining periods. People for a long time talked about the civil rights movement being very bounded in the 1950s and 60s. But then that kind of excludes people who have done, black activism outside of that period. And so now they've talked about the long and short civil rights movement. where like the long civil rights movement kind of goes all the way back to the end of the Civil War and continues to today. While like the short civil rights movement contains like that little bit in the 50s and 60s where a lot went down. So that leads to a lot of debate and discussion. But in the end of the day, we are basically just trying to draw boxes around categories that we have indeed made ourselves. And that has limitations and that causes problems. But I think that it's still useful to an extent because it makes history easier to organize and categorize. And if you don't do stuff like periodization, it's just going to be like, if you don't know literally everything that happened, you're not going to be able to speak to any subject, and that's not useful. So, and I think that also, like, periods definitely do speak through like particular points in points in the past that where certain things were normalized or certain sort of dynamics were made. Like, one that kind of makes sense is like there was a period where but like this is basically the Victorian age, right, where it was basically from the point Napoleon was defeated up until World War One is considered this like period that some people would call the Victorian age. It's very English centric, but that's sort of the word that people go with. And that period has a lot of major developments that are going on in the world that sort of define it. And so I think it makes sense in a sort of ways. One second, just got banned somebody. Hey, Alex Shenny, thank you so much for the 18 months of subscriptions. Thank you so much. Same with Madenmath. Thank you so much. And, oh, yeah. And Bry the Fry Guy, they've been subscribed for 2 months. Nice. It's free money. It is free money. That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see. The next question we have is the Clockwork King. You play D&D as a DM, right? Yes. What's my favorite magic item, official or homebrew? Oh, boy. So, the D&D magic items I like the most are the ones that have clever but often unintended great uses. My favorite, I think, right now would probably be the immovable. What's it called? The immovable rod, which is a magic item that is literally just a metal rod that if you push a button on it, it will not move. It will stay fixed in space no matter what like position you put it in. So you can do stuff like put it in the air and hang on to it, or you could like bar a door with it, or those kinds of things. But like I've seen some like characters make some pretty clever uses of it. The other would probably be the portable hole, which is exactly what you think it is. It's like a cloth that if you put on a surface becomes a hole. And I've seen some pretty cool uses of that too. What happens if it meets an unstoppable force? Okay, so it's called the immovable rod, but it actually can be moved. It's very hard to move it. Like you need to apply like 500 or 5,000 pounds of force or something like that in order to move it. So it's still quite a bit. It can hold up to 5,000 pounds without moving, but yeah. It's pretty cool. So it's just the very hard to movable rod. All right, let's see. After the War of 1812, was there ever a time Canadians thought the U.S. would invade them? This is from Orange Man. And the answer to that is a resounding yes. Um, Basically, after the War of 1812, even before the War of 1812, Canadians were very much under the impression that America would probably invade Canada at some point. And a lot of our defense and military were designed to keep the United States from invading us. That's a lot of our foreign policy is focused around that. And put on light music. There is light music. I'll turn it up a little bit. All right. Yeah, let's see. So, like, if you were to look at like Canadian, like a lot of Canadian construction, especially our military constructions in the 19th century, we built a lot of like forces and garrisons and stuff like that that were designed to protect the border with the United States. Another example would be the would be Canada itself. There was a distinct thought. So there's a couple reasons why Canadian Confederation even happened in the first place. And one was that they were under the impression that Canada, being these separate colonies that were essentially run by partly a private corporation, were not going to be able to band together in case of another U.S. invasion. So that was a thing that people thought about with Canada. The second was that even though after the War of 1812 there was a treaty that clearly outlined a line of latitude, that if you were to pass that, like above this was supposed to be Canada and below this was supposed to be the U.S. And that sort of divided the, as that point, uncolonized parts of the West between the two countries. And Canada had been really far behind the United States when it came to sending people out to the prairies out west to colonize. And they did not think, though, that if they left that stuff unpersoned, that they would probably, the U.S. would probably just come in and take it. So they wanted to build a railroad between British Columbia and Ontario. So Canada was sort of formed to spearhead that project and to settle people in places that are like modern day Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, so that they could get it before the Americans kind of came in and swooped it in and took it. So, and yeah, part of the benefits of Ottawa as the capital was that it was thought to be defensible to the U.S. That is true, because at one point they were considering London, Ontario to be the capital of Canada, but then they thought it was too close to the U.S., so... All right. That would have been annoying. Two countries with capitals the same. Yeah. The reason why London is called London is because it was essentially settled by refugees from the American Revolution. So all of those loyalists you heard about in the American textbooks about the American Revolution, eventually, like, they lost all of their property and all of their stuff and were sent packing to Canada. And the Canadian colonial administration basically settled them. And one of the places they settled them was sort of southwestern Ontario, this place that needed people to defend against the United States, but there really wasn't a lot of people at that time. And so they made London as sort of part of that. All right. The next question from Orange Man, I think demands Mia to be there to answer, so I won't go through that. So London is just Canada's Miami? Yeah, I guess a little bit. Was Miami made to protect the southern United States against like the Caribbean or whatever? Or made of refuge. I guess like Miami, isn't Miami made of refugees from Cuba or whatever? Is a reference to that? Do I remember you at all? I won't be offended if you know. I remember that girl has been noticed. Yeah. You used to watch this stream pretty regularly, and then you got a job, if I remember correctly. And sort of disappeared for a while or something. I think that was you. Because you used to be that girl that hasn't been noticed, and then I noticed you, and you went to that girl that has been noticed. Look a bit tired. Kid giving you trouble? No. I'm having a bit of a... I'll tell you the story of this because it shows how you should probably be aware of when you make major changes to the way that you take care of your body. You should probably do them incrementally, like one at a time. So what happened is people probably picked up that I've been on a sort of like health and weight loss kick for the last like not like what's it called, like about like 9 months or so. And one of the things that I did, so I did a whole bunch of changes to my life. So one, I started eating a lot less, obviously. I started working out a lot. Which, it's supposed to be, I was trying to build muscle and everything like that. I also stopped eating red meat very abruptly. And I had a baby, and when you have a baby, you don't get a whole lot of sleep. So I started abusing caffeine to keep myself, getting through the day. Here's the thing about excessive caffeine use and exercising a lot and rapid weight loss and not eating red meat altogether, which is that all of those are things that cause your blood iron to plummet. Any one of those can cause your blood iron to go down, and I did all of them. So I went to go donate blood about a month ago, and they said that my hemoglobin level was basically just above the cutoff point. And that's not good. And when I went to go see my doctor, I mentioned it, and I got my blood test, and they said that my hemoglobin levels were pretty low. And then I need to get another test in June, but I should start taking iron pills. But I've been told that iron pills can sometimes take like months to take effect. I've been on them for now 2.5 weeks, about. So that's a thing. But the thing is that anemia, which is, the sort of effect of having low blood iron, results in a few side effects. And one of them is essentially that you have to, you just want to sleep all the time. You're tired constantly. And I thought that was an effect of the, baby causing me to not sleep. But now I'm on a more normal sleep schedule, and I'm not getting any more energy. So that's like, okay, this must be like the iron problems. And then the second thing is that I get headaches almost daily. So that is another thing that causes me to, I'm always like, I had to take Advil right before this stream because I already gotten a headache. So that's fun. All of those are super, super fun. But that's sort of why I am a little tired, is that I essentially I'm low in blood iron, and guides on the weight loss journey. Thank you. Yeah, it turns out when you do something drastic like lose like 100 pounds in 6 months, your body responds. Sometimes not the best to that kind of stuff. Iron pills take a long time to kick. Animator reconsiders iron pills are like it's like the thing is like your body has like a store of iron in it that making new red blood cells depletes. And by the time that you are starting to have symptoms of anemia, it means that your iron levels are already really low. And your body is not going to return back to normal until you have sort of built up your iron stores more. So you have to like take iron for, like, I think people told me that like it can take like as much as like, it could take as little, or at a minimum it takes about 2 weeks for you to start noticing your blood iron going back up. But you know, it's been about 2.5 weeks and I still haven't noticed, but I've been told it can take like months between when, like, you know, symptoms of anemia and when you start taking iron supplements and you start actually feeling the difference. Have I seen the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trail? If I have not, that is fine. I have not. That is one of those things where I have not done a whole lot of work to... it's never been a thing that I took a huge amount of interest in. It sounds like, from what I... Here's like the basics of what I know. Oh yeah. Tips about iron thing you probably know. No coffee around meals. Don't forget about vitamin C for iron absorption. Don't consume calcium and iron heavy foods together. Okay. I have been drinking like lemon juice mixed with water when I take my iron pill. And I typically take my iron... I do have my coffee like right after my iron pill, so I should probably stop doing that. But you can't just eat a spoon or something. No, your body's a little bit more complex than that. But yeah. Good stuff. I mean, not good stuff, but you know how it is. The other thing too is that it's hard to catch because it's very rare for men to be anemic. It's a much more, because of menstruation, people who menstruate are much more likely to get anemia because periods can cause anemia. But it can still happen to people. And there's another factor, which is that I'm a regular blood donor. I donate blood about every month and a half or so, which you can imagine is also a very big, hit to your hemoglobin levels. Literally donating a pint of blood. So, and yeah, so people have said in the chat, like, yeah, you can supplement iron with non-meat sources, and I have tried to do that. I do eat a lot of spinach and stuff like that. I will say that there are limits to that. Like, this is sort of the reason why, if you want to be a vegan, and I am 100% on board for veganism, I think that it is a great lifestyle to have. You do have to make some very intentional choices about what you eat, and you usually have to take some supplements. Not saying that that's a bad thing to do. I'm just saying that it is a thing. Like, if you want to be, like, we have a culture where our food culture is built so much around meat that if you want to cut if you want to cut animal products out of your diet, you have to sort of fill things in. So spinach and other leafy greens are a good source of iron, but it's also not like, it's a good source of iron. It's not close to as good a source of iron as beef and like lamb and those kinds of like red meats are. So if you want to be vegan, you also have to implement things like eating a lot more lentils and beans and things like that in your diet. And a lot of times when people transition to veganism and don't do the research beforehand, they don't realize that, like, to be healthy and to be vegan, you have to eat like a whole lot of things like beans and lentils and like other sort of legumes and things like that. in order to get the full nutritional spread of things that you need, because meat is just a very cheap and easy source of a lot of essential vitamins and minerals. And then furthermore, so that's just for blood iron, but vegans also have one major problem, which is it has to deal with there is one vitamin that humans only get through meat that you would need to take supplements, and every vegan I know takes vitamin B12 supplements specifically, because there's either no or not that many foods that are vegan and have good amounts of vitamin B12, and it's just easier to take a vitamin B12 supplement instead. So where does that vitamin B12 come from? There are mineral sources of vitamin B12. Like, there are animals that, like a lot of grazing, like herbivores, they get vitamin B12 usually by licking rocks. Like salt licks and stuff like that. Like, the reason why like deer and horses and stuff like that lick salt licks is because they get some essential vitamins and minerals from that kind of thing that they don't get from meat. But yeah, and vitamin B12 is one of those. But, you know, no matter how dedicated people are to veganism, I don't think anyone wants to include licking rocks as a significant part of their lifestyle. And just taking vitamin B12, that where the B12 is not sourced from animals, is probably the best way to do it. And like vitamin B12 is pretty easy to come by, so it's not super hard to get a hold of. Yeah, so B12 is made by bacteria that animals then consume, and a few algae have it. But yeah, supplements are easier. That is true. If you are neurodivergent and you have restricted diets to autism and ADHD, check your diet and make sure you're supplementing minerals and vitamins into your diet. Yeah, most of the time this is not so much to worry about, because most people who eat a fairly balanced diet are not going to be deficient in minerals or vitamins. Like if you eat, if you are, you know, omnivorous and you eat a good healthy mix of food groups, you're probably going to be fine in the vitamins and minerals department. You don't need to unless you are doing something with your diet that is strange or is very far out from that, you need to start taking supplements. Like yeah, if you're going vegan, there are certain supplements you'll need to take. If you are vegetarian, same. If you have I love like if you for religious or neurodivergence reasons you only eat certain things, other reasons and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not, because like the thing is, like, I will never say, like, I am not against veganism. I think it's a very legitimate choice and probably the more ethically correct one in our situation. Just, you know what you're doing before you do it, right? And just know that there are things that you'll need to change up your diet. Like if you are going to get all of your nutrition from solely plant sources, start eating beans. Ethically, in what sense? Well, I have the sense that in the future we are going to be, we are like like every society, right? Like 100 years from now is going to look back on, like we look back on society 100 years from now and are appalled by the things that we thought were normal, the sort of casual cruelty. And I am very much convinced that 100 years from now, they're going to look back on our society and look at our energy and resource wastefulness, as well as the way that we treat animals, and be absolutely appalled by it. And so that is going to be like in my mind, at the end of the day, the things that we do to animals to get food is not. It is not. It's not ethical at the industrial scale, at the very least. I think that there is a way through that. I am very much following the cellular agriculture industry. I think that is basically our only real way through, because meat is it's a very easy source of nutrition, and it's one that obviously people have very much developed a taste for. So I don't think that getting the entire world to be vegan is going to work at scale. Be great if it did, but it's not a thing that I think is going to happen. So the cellular agriculture industry is sort of building that up, and once that takes off, I feel like we'll be in a much better situation. What do I eat on my cheat days? I don't really have a lot of cheat days. I don't try to think of my diet in a sense of like cheat days and non-cheat days and stuff like that. I just sort of try to adjust what I eat in a typical day and not worry about when I go off the plan too much, and just sort of relax. But the closest thing would probably be that on Sundays I go to the farmer's market with some friends of mine, and we get curry and dumplings, and then after that get some beers. And that would probably be the closest thing I do. I do that most Sundays, so. Don't assume progress. Yeah. I mean, I think that will be a thing in the future. That will be a way that we think back on it. Do you have any thoughts on the future of energy? Do I have any thoughts? What can I say about energy? It's the current crisis of our moment. A lot of the major problems we're having is that energy is like the literal lifeblood of civilization, and we are trying to take the energy sources that we have relied upon to power the entire Industrial Revolution, and in an extremely short amount of time, completely change them into a new form, and one that is, is in some ways like harder to do. Like, it's really easy to just burn a rock and get a fuckload of energy, while to get the same amount of energy from the sun and from the wind is it's a lot more of a process. That's just a fact of our sort of crisis, and to make that transition, and we have to make that transition because we're kind of coming up against the wall on basically causing complete system collapse of our biosphere, because we cannot get a hold of producing energy in a way that is conducive to keeping the biosphere healthy, and so like that's my take. We are working on at this point, the way that I see things going is that we are seeing some pretty intense research and development into renewable technologies, that now climate change is and dealing with our energy crisis is becoming more of a political problem than a logistical problem. Now, if you were to invest in the energy sector, you would be much smarter in investing in solar panels than, say, like coal, because coal plants are shutting down, and solar panels have had such a drastic decrease in their per unit pricing over the last 15-20 years that there are very few power sources that are cheaper than just powering your stuff with solar panels. There are some technological hurdles that we still need to deal with when it comes to renewable energy sources that a lot of fossil fuel power doesn't have to deal with. And these are the real sort of technological gaps that are causing things to to really stall, which is mostly battery technology. If we can get battery technology to, if we can make a major breakthrough in batteries, that would be huge. That would change a lot of things. So that's one. And also like, there's a lot of like in sort of like every time I talk about moving to renewable and some energy, that there's a lot of talk about like, well, why don't we also depend a whole lot on nuclear? And while like, yeah, I agree to that to an extent. Nuclear power is not like transitioning our power grid to one that is predominantly nuclear in the time frame that we need to get ourselves off of fossil fuels is not feasible at this point, because nuclear power plants are extremely expensive and time consuming to make. Like an average nuclear power plant takes like almost a decade to go from groundbreaking to up and running. And as far as power generations go, it is an extremely expensive process, because at the current moment, thorium aside, a lot of nuclear power today requires uranium-235, which is has a rarity on par with silver as a mineral, and also nuclear power plants have to be very specifically and specially built so that meltdowns are not a problem. Like they usually have like these like very intense solid concrete constructs around them so that they don't like have like major like steam problems. Like nuclear steam and those kinds of things. And they usually have to have permanent security on staff to manage the waste and all that kind of stuff. And they have to spell a whole bunch of like logistic systems around the removal and disposal of radioactive waste. So that's all part of the nuclear power plant life cycle. And while I still think that it's a worthwhile endeavor to do, just know that nuclear power doesn't come cheap, right? It's expensive, and to keep it safe, you have to put a lot into its design. Fine. It produces a fuckload of electricity as a sort of result. And so it's worth it in my mind. Just know that like if we were to like say replace all of our natural gas and coal power with nuclear, we would probably have supply chain issues with getting enough uranium to power such a thing. And it would take longer than we have to make that transition to get those power plants online, unless we found some way to really speed up the process, or we radically transformed nuclear power, like pushing for some sort of like liquid fluoride thermal power type stuff. That is sort of stuff that is in development right now, and we are not quite at the point where we can make like a commercial liquid fluoride thorium power plant right at this moment. But someday. And so in my mind, the climate change energy crisis that needs to be addressed right now is we need to get ourselves through probably some combination of solar, like the classics, solar, wind, geothermal, and probably maybe even hydrogen fuel cell technology to get ourselves off of fossil fuels and onto electrification. That's like the rapid thing that we need to do with the current technology that exists today. Once that happens, then we can have discussions about like I don't know, like if we have a energy grid that is largely based off of these sort of renewable resources, then maybe we can have a conversation about whether we even need to be building new nuclear power plants, because they are, compared to a wind turbine, nuclear power is incredibly safe. Compared to a wind turbine, not so much. Compared to a coal plant, for sure. And hydroelectric dams, yeah, all good stuff. But then we can start thinking about nuclear power that is going to be in the next generation of stuff. That's when we can if we have post energy crisis, we can have talks about starting liquid fluoride or thorium tetrafluoride based lifter reactors, which would power us off of thorium instead of uranium, which is a much more common mineral. And it's also a byproduct of the mining that we do to make touch screens and plasma screens and stuff like that. And we could do that to make smaller, more module, steady nuclear power plants that don't even require people essentially to function, because it can't really be weaponized and it can't really melt down. And so you can do stuff like make them and then bury them for several decades while they just sort of burn through their fuel. So that stuff could all happen. And I'm cool with that. And then of course there's like the holy grail, like if we could figure out something to do with there's been some, I've been looking at this, there's been some breakthroughs in the fusion power space. There's been like there's been a few really cool developments in the tokamak style fusion reactor, but even the most optimistic person in the sort of fusion space is still saying that we are quite a ways away. We are decades away at this point to being able to power the world through fusion. And of course, fusion will have some similar problems to fission when it comes to nuclear power, which is that even if we do get it going, to build a fusion plant at this point, like, we are learning very quickly that the first generation of fusion power plants are going to be ridiculously expensive because they basically have to be humongous. And they also have to, they're very specialized because fusion power plants consume a astronomical amount of energy to sort of start ignition. So, but yeah, it's going to be... there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of things to deal with. But in my mind, the wind and solar situation right now is really the only feasible way that it's the only feasible technology we have to transition off of fossil fuels in the timeline that we have to deal with the climate crisis. That's my take right now, and that's why, like, while I think that nuclear has its role in the future of growing our consumption of energy, I think that the time and expense involved in making them sort of takes them off the table for like the next few years. How far in your history studies before you dropped out? I dropped out of my PhD. I was 3 years in my PhD program, and I was what's called ABD, which means I had all but dissertation. So I had everything finished except for my dissertation, and I dropped out at that point. That's basically it. So the next, I'm starting to feel a little bit more energetic. That's good. The next question I got here is, here's a bit of discourse I'm not sure you picked up on, but on Twitter, an anarchist made a post giving general advice not to go to a protest, organize, or direct action while drunk or high, led to them being ratioed and called a Puritan by other Twitter leftists, and I don't get it. Like, do these people think Antifa and BLM should be getting hammered before going to a protest? Oh, boy. Well, Matt, I don't really have an answer to you on that. I think that in many ways, anarchists telling people how to behave themselves when they are not hurting people is not very on brand, I guess I should say. But, and you can imagine that anarchists are not like the biggest fans of being told what to do when it comes to, you know, especially when it comes to like things like the drugs and such. And yeah, the whole, if this is like for PR reasons, that's one thing. If it's for safety reasons, that has a little bit more legitimacy. But yeah. Do I feel concerned by the current advancement in AI technology and the fact that it is currently almost entirely controlled by large tech companies like Google and Elon Musk? A little bit. I'm not like, I think that general AI is a little far off. Like, so I'm not like that. Not that wild, I guess I should say. The main problem, I think, is more that artificial intelligence is going to fuck us over because of things like, I've said this on the stream before, like the sort of paperclip problem. There's this sort of idea, what's it called? There's sort of this idea that that artificial intelligence, an artificial intelligence that will be given goals that are sort of we don't realize that the way that they will optimize for those goals in ways that we can't really control are going to result in them doing something pretty catastrophic. Like the idea is that if you made like an AI that was designed to be the most efficient creator of paperclips in the universe, that it would eventually find ways to just like convert all matter on Earth into paperclips, which is not doing what it would be. So like a lot of the problems with AI is going to be like how it's been programmed and stuff like that. In which case, you know, tech people being in charge of it is going to be, it's going to be a real problem. But yeah. I watch too much science fiction. Okay, sure. I don't think this is like a problem that we're going to be dealing with anytime soon. I think artificial intelligence has a lot of very good applications in a lot of things that we're dealing with right now. But like, yeah, like the whole general AI thing, I think is still quite a ways away. I think that the more that we learn about the brain, the more that we know that like we learn that we've still got a long way to go before even the most sophisticated computers that we built are coming close to their ability to do parallel processing and stuff like that. You have any anarchy-related questions? Cool. Yeah, I always think about like like all of the fucking monkey paw wishes type thing. Like there's always that kind of stuff with AI. But a paperclip optimizer is a general AI. Okay, yeah, okay. I don't think it's going to be like exactly a paperclip optimizer, but I do think that like an AI could cause like an AI that's not necessarily like I guess there's like kind of different levels to the problem. Like as AIs become more sophisticated, we're learning that we rely on them even and think of them as like unbiased perfect systems when they usually just reflect the bias of the data that goes into them, because they're based on machine learning technology, and machine learning technology can be biased by the quality and the types of data that it consumes. And that, like for example, like the AI that's been used to give people sentences for crimes has been shown to show a lot of racial bias because of even though it wasn't like, it wasn't designed to do that, it just sort of from the biased data that it interpreted. Also like AIs that try to determine like where crime is going to happen and stuff like that. Like that's where AIs are going to cause problems, is that they're going to be used to be in place of decisions that humans make. And because their AIs are going to be considered like, not fallible, or they're going to be considered completely neutral, but they're going to reflect the bigotries and issues of the data that it chewed on or it munged in order to become the way it is. How difficult would it be to make North America not car-centric? Pretty hard at this point. Maybe it's definitely worth doing, but the fact is that car-centric society is not just like a mindset. It's baked into North America through fucking concrete and steel, and like moving away from car-centric societies is going to involve a lot of tearing up infrastructure and building completely new infrastructure, and that's going to be difficult. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think it's worthwhile work. Very interesting story of justice going to fail in my life when one person refused. Oh, I think you asked this question in here somewhere. Didn't you ask this question on Patreon? Yeah, I think this is a question you asked on Patreon, so I will save that for one of my Patreon videos. Multiple times in healthcare deployed or AIs where AIs would pick the race of the person being x-rayed in other exams where it made the link between racialized illness due to lack of access to healthcare. Ooh. See, that's the thing, is like where AIs are really useful is that like I was working with artificial intelligence for my PhD research, and artificial intelligence is, I think, like a very useful tool because it's able to make connections in large data sets that are larger than humans can like meaningfully study and make conclusions about. Like, and when we get into these sort of big information problems, an AI is going to be better at finding the sort of story in the big wads of data that a human will not be able to. Like, for example, artificial intelligence is finding a really big life in doing stuff like studying protein folding and studying like sort of different problems in genomics and things like that in order to find things like an artificial intelligence was very recently heavily used to develop an enzyme. So that, and once they get the sort of once they get this enzyme in bacteria and sort of into an industrial capacity, this enzyme would allow bacteria to essentially metabolize plastic, which I'm sure you can understand is a huge fucking deal. Because basically what it does is it metabolizes the polymers that make up plastic and turn them into sort of more base materials. And apparently they turn them into base materials that can be used to make more plastic, which would have the dual factor of having a way to actually recycle plastic and recycling it into something that can be used to make virgin plastic, which would mean that if it could work, then that we could also take petroleum out of the plastic making process, which is really useful because plastic is an extremely useful material. So, can you discuss the first use of cybernetics in Chile under Allende? I did. There's a video I made about it last year, so you can watch that. Bam. We have found bacteria in the wild that have evolved to break down plastics in the oceans because we have dumped just that much plastic into the ocean in the past century. Yeah. Yeah. This current project, though, if they could do that, it would be very good to... it would be really awesome because that plastic without petroleum and also being able to recycle plastic, which is having a hard time, like, you know, it's plastic entering our like plastic is just creating so much waste that does not biodegrade in a really good way. So that would be a huge deal. Like if that happened, if they were able to industrially produce that sort of bacteria with that sort of thing, that would lead to a situation where you could end up with companies that are focused on making like virgin plastic that would start buying up like they would start buying up landfill sites to harvest garbage, to sift out the plastic in it, and harvest that plastic and turning it into polymers that can be used to make virgin plastic. And if that cycle starts happening, we are going to be in a much better situation than we are now. That's for sure. Thoughts on the upcoming French elections? Do you think NUPES have a chance against Macron? I don't actually know what's going on with the French elections. I'm hoping that it will be something a little bit better than just Macron versus Le Pen, but I'm not optimistic. I imagine... Sounds a lot like trusting capitalism to fix the problems. I'm not speaking about it in like a capitalism sense. I'm talking about it in like an industrial process sense. Like if that was an industrial process where we were starting to convert our garbage into fresh plastic, that would be amazing. That would be revolutionary for like our economy and for, you know, our waste production. And unfortunately, in our current fucking economy, making it to the point where it would be profitable is the way to get that up and running. Because until the fucking Soviet Revolution happens, that's unfortunately what we have to work with, and that sucks. Because then you have to figure out how to make saving the Earth profitable. But I would prefer doing that over just, you know, waiting while the Earth fucking cooks alive until the perfect solution, or until the revolution comes. The French election was weeks ago. Well, they do 2-round elections, don't they? Let's see. Would it be fair to say that Eric von Daniken basically invented ancient aliens conspiracy theory subculture? Yeah. He didn't invent the ancient astronaut theory, but he definitely is definitely responsible for popularizing the idea. I did a whole 2-parter about how he is largely responsible for all that time. French election this time is for parliament. Oh. Yeah, I'm not super connected to French politics, I will say. Gods, I hate Eric von Daniken. You can imagine that I have a lot of frustration with the man as well. Leftist parties are coming together to beat Macron. The election that was just happening was a presidential election where Macron beat the fascist Le Pen. Yeah. It sounds like just like 2018, right? Okay. Well, that does sound like a pretty cool idea. I'd be interested in seeing how that turns out. That's for sure. Mélenchon is finagling to become prime minister, which would be cool. Yeah, Mélenchon he seems pretty cool. I would like, if he was prime minister, it'd be pretty funny to see what happens to Macron at that point. But that would be like generally good for France. Macron said that Le Pen's party wasn't hard enough on immigration and Islam. The fuck? That's a weird position. Is there a platform for podcasts where you make more money than Spotify? I want to listen to the best place if possible. At this point, there is no platform for the podcast that makes any money. At this moment, we do not make money on the podcast at all. The main thing that's going to happen in the future, hopefully, at this point, is that we're going to start getting sponsorships, because now we are a Nebula podcast, and on Nebula, one of the things that the people who make Nebula do is they find sponsors for your podcast. So hopefully we'll start getting some sponsorships, and also, if in the future, once we get to like this point, we can develop it, we'll also try to make it so that if you want to support the podcast, we decided we're not going to make a Patreon for It's Probably Not Aliens. And what we're going to focus on is if you want to support the podcast, you can sign up for Nebula. That will be like our hope, is to be like getting people onto Nebula, and then we will have like exclusive content and early episodes and stuff of the podcast on Nebula, and then you can get for an extremely good price. It's Probably Not Aliens, as well as all the other cool content that's on that platform. So at this point, that's not the case though. So just listen to it on whatever platform you like. How affordable is Nebula? Nebula is like $15 for like a year. So it's like less than $2 a month. It's a pretty good, and also you get Curiosity Stream in the same thing. So it's a pretty decent deal. And I've had stuff on Nebula, or I've had I've had Nebula since before I had a podcast on Nebula. So I think it's a good deal. But I don't shill for it yet. There's like a work in progress to try and get Step Back on Nebula, but it is currently stalled for various reasons that I probably can't get into. So all right. Back in 2004, I watched a TV documentary that predicted in the future everyone would have access to a database of every TV show ever made. Do you think that would have happened by now if not for capitalism? Like in a socialist society, instead of all these competing for profit services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, everyone would just watch TV show database for free? Probably. That would be like, because like, yeah, that would be the natural solution, right? Like it would be kind of like, because like Netflix kind of was doing that when it had Monopoly. And if you didn't have the sort of like competing copyright firms, then yeah, you would probably, the best option would be to be like a whole system of just streaming off of one platform. Yeah. I answered that last week? Okay. Let's see. Where do I find books on Russian history? That's a good question. When I need to find books on a subject, I will I will tell you that this is the place I go. When I want to find out about the books on the subject, I go to the Wikipedia article for said subject, especially for Wikipedia articles that are of a high standard. So I studied Wikipedia pretty intensely when I was doing my PhD research. I was using AI to study edit changes to Wikipedia. So I know a lot about its like internal structure. And I know that there are pages where they have people who are pretty knowledgeable about the subject, who almost work as a community to maintain a good, solid page and solid, high quality articles. And they always try to keep their things as like neutral and high quality as possible. What that results in is that on any like sufficiently good Wikipedia article, you're going to find a list of references that's going to be like almost like the who's who of good books on the subject. And that is usually when I'm researching a video, that's usually where I start and then sort of branch out from there. What does the Brape Bro say when you give him dry pasta? Have you got a source for that? That one really works if you're British. Do you have a source for that? Yeah. Yeah, you almost got to be British for that one to work. I appreciate the wordplay though. Let's see. What I said last week about American pop culture being way more socially progressive than its politics would lead you to expect historically is that unusual for countries drifting into fascism. Like, I know the Weimar Republic was very culturally progressive with the standards of the 30s, but what about Italy, Japan, Chile, etc.? I don't think that, like, it's kind of hard to say because popular media like that is sort of fairly new, especially like on the sort of wide branching thing as today. So, you know, I don't know if we have good historical parallels at this point. I would say that there is links between there being new forms of widespread communication technology and spikes in fascism or fascist movements. Like there's like in communications history and in technology history, there is a theory that what really enabled fascism to become what it was that it was the radio, and that like the Nazi Party and stuff like came to power because they were able to master the radio, which was sort of the emerging media platform of its day, and that the same thing happened with the internet and the sort of new fascist movement. It's a little messy to kind of go with, but I think that there's something to that. But yeah, and then there's also people saying that like fascism often comes from a reaction against against a rising left. Though I wouldn't say that, like, maybe this is just me, but I think that we mistakenly conflate socially progressive stuff with being left wing, which is not necessarily the same thing. I think I believe being socially progressive is a good thing. I just think that it doesn't have a whole lot to do with your idea of political economy, which is mostly what's supposed to determine whether you're left or right wing. Like, that conflation is sort of what's causing us to think that we can make common cause with liberals who are not racists but are still extremely right wing, and I don't think that's the case. And I think that you can still, or it also makes you think that there are people who that people are like left wing even though they're like that we can just because somebody is a communist that we can forgive being sexist, racist, or whatnot. And it's like, no, it's because they're not like there's not. Can the left wing be reactive as opposed to being progressive? Yes. There are a lot of people who are ostensibly right wing or ostensibly left wing, but are very socially reactionary. Like the whole fucking Caleb Maupin side of the left is an example. But if you also want other examples, like the American labor movement was very heavily divided because of racial segregation within unions, and yeah, there's a lot of cases in which there are people who are ostensibly on the right who have socially progressive views. Those are basically Democrats, right? And there are a lot of people who are ostensibly on the left who have reactionary views, like all those people I mentioned. So it is something that we need to be aware of, and that we are that we can't. And in many ways, because in the West we have had a targeted effort to not talk about class politics, i.e., because of the Cold War, we're thought to not talk about socialism, and socialism is not treated like a viable political option. In Western countries where socialism essentially doesn't have a place in contemporary politics, the left versus right wing divide entirely becomes progressive versus reactionary politics, in which case left and right really don't exist because they essentially do not have a left wing politics to them. There is no, like in America, there is no left wing party at all. There are two right wing parties. One is socially progressive and one is socially reactionary. But for the most part, on like all issues that would have to do with left and right wing politics, they agree on everything. So, yeah, and it's important. It's a distinction, and it sounds like it's like a pointless distinction, but it's important for understanding that, like, not every leftist is going to be an ally, and not every person on the right is going to be a bigot. And it means that for the sake of like, not taking on toxic allies, but also it means that there are periods for strategic alliances that won't work in all contexts. There are certain types of issues that we can work with liberals on, and there are very much some issues that we cannot. I was planning on making a video about Caleb Maupin, or no, because, well, I was going to talk about Caleb Maupin, but my wife has given me the very strong sense that she has literally like begged me to never make videos about what she called weirdos on the internet. So basically, to not make videos about like reacting or responding to weird right-wing internet influencers and stuff like that. And so I should make videos about issues and stuff that's important and not make videos about what fucking Benny Shapiro or Caleb Maupin are saying, which sounds fine to me. That's like that's a thing. So, but I was planning on making a video on the Strasser brothers, who were sort of these an epitome of this kind of thing, which was they were essentially the Nazi Party's intellectual leadership before Hitler took over. And they had a sort of like idea of economic anti-Semitism, where it was like this sort of like racist focused socialism, and that was like a legitimate strain within the Nazi Party for a long time. The Nazi Party had a left-wing contingent within it until they basically like kind of purged them from the party. So it's important to like understand that, like, and I was trying to like come to the conclusion, like, you can't really think of like the political compass doesn't really describe politics correctly, and that everybody's politics are complicated and contradictory and a mess of a whole bunch of things, and thinking about things in strict left-right dynamics isn't super useful, and it leads to us making assumptions about the way that people think, or about how different or how similar people are that are fundamentally not productive. So that was sort of the idea. Your wife is smart as hell. Yeah, I know. Yeah, beefsteaks, what they were called. Brown on the outside, red on the inside. Yeah, beefsteaks, Nazis or whatever. Mm-hmm. All right. My favorite Western cartoon at the moment is Toon Disney's The Owl House. The protagonist of Owl House is a bisexual teenage girl and eventually starts dating a teenage witch. The show is originally set entirely in a fantasy world where apparently there is no prejudice against queer people. But at the end of the last episode, all the main characters got transported to present-day Earth. If you're making a children's cartoon like that, would you have the characters encounter prejudice on Earth, or would you just ignore it altogether? I asked this on the Owl House subreddit, and several people told me having them encounter prejudice on Earth would undermine this show's intent to make queer kids feel accepted. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I don't really have a good answer on that front, because like, children's media in a lot of ways has a very different function than typical media, and there's a lot of media out there that, like, you know, should confront prejudice and talk about and talk about the trials. But if the show is meant to just be a feel good show to make to make queer kids feel like they are accepted and that they have a thing that is theirs, yeah, I probably would keep myself away from entering like the realm of like real world prejudice, just for the sake of, like, you know, keeping it a work of fun escapism. But like, but I think that there's also room in like a different type of project to be a thing to teach kids about prejudice and teach them about why it's wrong. I think that those both work. It's just that those are different shows that are for different purposes, probably for different age ranges too. I don't know what age range this show Owl House is for. I've never heard of it before just this moment, but I think that that, you know, that both can work for different types of projects. But like, yeah. And I do think that in many ways, a lot of queer people, especially like queer kids, really just need a show that just lets them, that doesn't really talk about bigotry against them and just lets them exist in a space that isn't like, you know, actively talking about how there are people on this planet that want them to not exist. And I think that a project that gives queer kids that sort of, like, you know, moment of solace is a good idea. It is a good project that that should be pursued. DS9 didn't have racism between humans, but it still touched on it. It had those two, like, what's it called? DS9 came the closest to talking about real world racism in the way where it had that episode where Cisco was having a vision that was convincing him that he was a science fiction author in the 1960s. And then also there's another one. It's less of a thing, but he talks about it's the casino heist episode of Deep Space Nine in season 7, where they're trying to get Cisco to go into the sort of like 1960s Las Vegas casino simulation that they've been on for the last few seasons that he had never gone into. And they finally ask him, like, hey, would you come in and help do this thing? And then he's just like, no, I don't want this, like, fucking sanitized version of this past that was extremely fucking racist towards black people. And it's like, shit, yeah, that is a little fucked up. He does eventually come through, and they do eventually do their heist episode, but that was an interesting point to make in that the way that the holodeck worked. So, yeah. Cisco was so based. Yeah, he was pretty awesome. I hope that Paramount finds a way to get him back on a Star Trek of some kind. I really want, they've mined the nostalgia for every single show except Deep Space Nine, and I really hope that it's because they're making a Deep Space Nine project of some kind. I would really like it because I know that the guy who plays Avery Brooks, the guy who plays Sisko, is basically refusing to come back unless they also hire Sirach Lofton, who played Jake Sisko, because the whole thing with Sisko and Jake was like a really big reason why Avery Brooks agreed to do that show in the first place. And so I hope, what's it called? Star Trek Sisko, that's sort of like Picard, and it's just a drama between like Ben and freaking Jake about like them because you know, at that point Benjamin Sisko is like gone off to become a wormhole alien or whatever, but him like coming back, and you know, you could have Cassidy and all that kind of stuff. Like that'd be a pretty fun. I feel like that could be a pretty fun show. Make the main character freaking Jake Sisko. That'd be great. I don't imagine that. I don't know if Jake Sisko carrying a show would be something that Paramount Plus is willing to dump millions of dollars into that bet, but Sirach Lofton looking good these days. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, he's a good-looking guy. It looks like he went bald, and it is working. Ooh, yeah. Good job. Okay. Let's see what more we got here. Should young Earth creationism be taught as something akin to other extreme denying right-wing conspiracies like flat eartherism? Shout out to Mia's new video. Or new chronology rather than just very conservative religion? A while back, Mia responded to one of the questions about her stance on religions. Okay, I'm going to wait until next week to answer this one, since that one seems like it would benefit a lot from having Mia around. Due to the fact the majority of trans people... okay, let's just... need access to certain drugs and medical care to exist, make them more susceptible to government persecution or even state genocide attempts compared to other... I think we probably want Mia for that one, too. I would guess. Honestly, I'd be down for the Captain Nog series. I would, too, but unfortunately, we can't do that one because... Aaron Eisenberg unfortunately passed away in 2019. And he was tragically young. Like I think he was in his 40s or maybe he was 50 or something like that. But yeah, he unfortunately passed away a few years ago, which means that there is no Nog. There's no Nog. That's the part about doing a Deep Space Nine reunion that would be difficult, is that most of the, like, it has probably the most, aside from TOS, I think it has the most dead cast of all of the 90s Star Treks. Like, I don't think any of the main cast of TNG or Voyager or Enterprise have died, but I do think that with the death of Rene Augenabois and Aaron Eisenberg, Deep Space Nine has had that happen quite a bit. You think that's why they stayed away from DS9 is because of because there's no, they wouldn't be able to bring back. I mean, they could bring back Odo. I think they could do that. Don't think Garrick would come back these days. He really values his privacy, and Trek actors don't get that these days. That's true. Actually, if I recall correctly, and this is actually kind of sad, is that what's his name? His name Ben Kingsley. Let me just check. The cast is really affected by Eisenberg. Yeah, that makes sense. John Billingsley. So one of the things that I thought was interesting that we found out later is that John Billingsley, who is the actor who played Dr. Phlox on Enterprise, was reportedly in talks to be tapped to play the chief medical officer of the Enterprise on Strange New Worlds. And they were going to have like old Dr. Phlox be the doctor of the Enterprise. And he turned it down because I guess he's essentially quit acting. And now he just does philanthropic work. Which is like, all right, good on you. So, to kind of follow up on the D Space Nine and thing with Aaron Eisenberg, is that they did do a panel at the last Star Trek Day event of D Space Nine actors, where they had 3 DS9 actors, and they all said that they would come back if it was something a little bit more substantial than just a cameo. That was basically the idea they got, right? I think it was like, it had, I think the panel, I don't remember who the third person was, but they had Nana Visitor, who played Kira, and they had, I don't remember what her name was, but she was the person who played Lita, the Dabo girl. And they said that like those two, at least those two said that they would come back if there was, something substantial. And I think that there's a lot, especially given the War on Terror stuff. I feel like there's a lot of stuff to talk about with Kira's story. That her story would have there's a lot more to talk about with Kira when it comes to the post 9/11 narrative about terrorism and rebellion and stuff like that. And I would be interested to see what they come up with that. Tom Paris's cameo was legitimately hilarious, so I was fine. I would buy the plate if I could. If I was feeling frivolous, I would buy the Tom Paris plate that you can get as Star Trek merch. Yeah. I wonder when season 3 of Lower Decks will be out. That's a good question. I'm hoping that we're going to get to the point where it's going to be, because it sounds like the plan is to basically just have nonstop Star Trek forever on Thursdays, right? So Strange New Worlds is going to end probably sometime in July or something like that. In which case they'll probably, I don't know what's going to come in July. If I were to hazard a guess, it's probably going to be the freaking Prodigy show. And then when that has its season finale, we don't really know what's coming up in the late summer. But late summer is usually when Lower Decks goes on the air. So I imagine we'll probably get it like in August or July this year. New Orville season just dropped a few days ago. Yeah, it did. Holy shit. They came back. First of all, I watched the first episode of the new season, and it's really good. And also, like, has just completely dropped any pretense of being a comedy show now. And because like the first episode is literally is about freaking about hatred and suicide. The first fucking episode of the new Orville season. So I'm like, holy shit, okay. Did they cancel Star Trek because it taught children socialism? No, I think they canceled it because it just wasn't getting enough viewers for them to sell soap or whatever. Their take, they were bad about suicide. Their take was bad, although they did, like, they discussed it. It was while like, yeah, their eventual, the conclusion of the show was definitely not like great. It had like a feeling of like some of the more philosophical episodes of TNG that you are just flat out not getting in modern day Star Trek. So I was happy to have that like kind of reminded me of the episode of TNG where they think that Worf is going to be permanently disabled, and he wanted, and rather than have that, he wanted to have I think it was like Riker commit suicide, and that, I mean, they didn't come to the right conclusion in that episode either, but it at least like rose interesting questions. You watched the Critical Role show? I thought it was pretty bad, TBH. I mean, I liked it, but obviously I'm learning very quickly that I am I'm a cheap laugh, or I'm a cheap it's easy to win me over with the right thing. You give me a Star Trek, it's going to be hard for me to not like it. That's what I'm learning. Was Star Trek socialist in the 1960s? I don't think they went mask off and said, yeah, we don't use money until the TNG era. I think the first reference to that was the movie in the 80s. The first reference to it was, what's it called? Was the Voyage Home, I think. Wait, Critical Role, like the D&D show. Yeah, it got a Critical Role got a Amazon Prime cartoon series. And the first season came out earlier this year, and I thought it was all right. But you know, as I mentioned, I'm a cheap happy. You know, I don't watch a lot of TV, and the TV I do watch, I'm like, you know, I'm gonna be reasonably happy with for the most part. All right. Let's see if we got any more questions sitting in the question bank. Is Dragon Ball Z abridged? Like, is that a parody, or is that like, did somebody actually make Dragon Ball Z without all of the like multiple episodes of bullshit? Because like, I might watch. I kind of dropped off Dragon Ball Z at a certain point, and I was always curious about how it ended. And I'm kind of, but I also know that show has like so much fucking fuller bullshit that I really don't want to re-experience. But if they ever have a version that, like, you know, that cut back on all of the random bullshit, that would be cool. Didn't they release Dragon Ball Z with less filler? I don't know. Did they? If they did, I'd be curious. But yeah, I think I stopped watching. What did I stop watching? When did I stop watching? I think that sometime during all the Cell stuff is when I stopped watching the show, like when I was in high school, basically, right? So that's like my oh, Dragon Ball Z Kai, huh? Maybe I should check it out. I would. What's it called? When the baby's old enough that I don't have to super worry about. Listen, when I get to the point where I can safely smoke marijuana That would be a fun show to watch while I am stoned. That's my suspicion. You made comment in an old video about the myth of the tragedy of the commons. I'm not 100% sure. What do you mean? That's how I interpret the tragedy. Is the tragedy of commons a myth? Yes. Yes, it is. The idea that the commons were these horrible, missed, like, you know, ruined places that everyone just exploited and didn't, because they didn't have a vested income in it until capitalists drew fences around it and made everything perfect, is bullshit. It's an unfact. It is factant. And it was more used to justify the enclosure of common land and turn it into private property, which meant that, sure, it would have more grass because now people couldn't use it to feed their fucking animals on, which also meant that those people didn't have feed to feed their animals on. Or they had to pay people. Tristan, you're sitting with a devil's lettuce? No, it's a completely legal substance here in Canada. You know what? Okay, so we're kind of, some people are talking about Dragon Ball Z and stuff. You know what was the anime that I also never saw the end of, but I remember enjoying a lot when I was a kid? Fucking Gundam Wing. That was the show that was on the air that I never, like, it was, I mean, I think it was, like, made, like, way before this, but when I was in high school is when they started releasing English versions of it. And I recall enjoying it quite a bit, but then I kind of, there's this point in my life where, like, I think it was, like, actually when I started going to high school, basically. So around the end of 8th grade, because, like, you know, 6th, 7th, 8th grade is when I think I watched, like, peak Dragon Ball Z and Gundam Wing and stuff like that. And then when I went to high school, I basically, like, really stopped watching television, which is sort of something that has continued all the way to today. I don't really watch a lot of TV compared to a lot of people. The only TV I watch really is, like, during meals with my wife. And I'm like, should I have, like, finished all these shows that I stopped watching in 8th grade? Probably because, or probably not, because those shows are probably, you know, seen through the lens of me when I'm like 12, so, or 13 or whatever, so I probably don't have any taste whatsoever, but watch the adults very cringe mostly. Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, most anime is cringe, in my humble opinion, but alright, my opinion on avant-garde psychedelic music and why the music of that nature is typically made by leftists. I don't know if it's typically made by leftists, liberals mostly, but I mean, it's not for me, but I'm not against psychedelic music. Like, I don't have strong opinions on it, to be honest. I don't have very good taste in music, so I should not be a judge of what music you should or should not listen to. My taste in music is fucking awful, but I think that in many ways, I think that there are a lot of, like, artist bohemian types who become left-wing because, you know, it's not a job that, it's a job where you spend a lot of time being not very wealthy until you are very wealthy, and then you notice all the shit. Like, and you get a lot, and you're as an artist, you have a lot more time where you have to be self-reflective. So, damn, Tristan, you just sweeping all anime into cringe category burns a little bit. This is where you shouldn't trust me. So I will list literally every anime that I have watched more than 3 episodes of. Okay, Pokemon, pretty cringe. Digimon, pretty cringe, especially when you get into season 3 where it just becomes where they're trying to do like a card captor bullshit. Fucking Dragon Ball Z, good but cringe. Gundam Wing, apparently very cringe. Then as an adult, let's see, what are the anime shows I tried to watch as an adult? Death Note. Death Note gets extremely cringe, especially when they get bored of the sort of cat and mouse story of the main thing and then just add girl. And the girl's personality is girl. That is the personality they make that character, basically. And so that show got very cringe at that point. And fucking Attack on Titan, which I watched probably like maybe like 10, 11 episodes of. Also, Full Metal Alchemist. I've only ever seen one episode of Full Metal Alchemist. And I don't know why I didn't watch more. I do like the idea that the 8-year-old is basically a suit of armor. That's a pretty... Like, the 8-year-old younger brother gets turned into a suit of armor. I think that's neat. And the thing about... So, like, Full Metal Alchemist, like a lot of other animes, and this is sort of the thing about animes that always, like, every time I see it, it fucking annoys me, is that every anime has some sort of gimmick, right? Like, this is the anime that's about this thing. That is... It's the anime about this thing. The problem is that it never experiments outside of the thing. I'll take for an example, Attack on Titan. Obviously, not a lot of fans in the chat because it's, made by like a Japanese nationalist and stuff like that. And it's got some like fucked up shit to say. But like, the show's gimmick is like its weird Spider-Man fights, right? Like, its gimmick is the... Like, what's it called? That makes no sense. I just realized I was just saying stupid stuff. They have this form of fighting where you kill titans, which are like the big evil guys of the show, and they're like giants. But to do it, they use these sort of like system of pneumatic grappling hooks that make them fly around the city like Spider-Man, and then they carry like a pair of like swords on their back, and they basically, because the only way to kill them is to slash the back of their necks. So they go like fucking zipping around on these like these sort of grappling hook things until they kill the Titan by slashing the back of the neck. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is the gimmick. This is the show. This is what the show wants to have. Then there's this scene, and I remember because this is exactly the moment I stopped watching the show. There's this scene where they are on horseback in a field. They leave the city to do something outside of the city. And they start getting chased down by a Titan. And I'm like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. Because there's no buildings around them. They're just on horseback. They can't use their pneumatic jetpack thing to zip around and do the same thing that they usually do. They're going to have to be creative and do something cool to survive this Titan encounter. That's not what happens. They're basically like, hey, look over there. It's a giant, thick redwood forest. And it's just like a forest where the trees are so big that they are like the size of buildings. And so they just veer into that. And then they just do the exact same sequence, but with trees. And it's like they couldn't think of doing one unique fight, because it would go against the gimmick. And that's the part where I'm like, okay, I'm done. But like that is a common thing in anime, and so I'm not like very like it's very common for anime to be about the one thing and not deviating from the one thing. And I was starting, and I think this might not be the case, but I'm starting to notice that was the case with Full Metal Alchemist, where they while the cool, like the concept of alchemy was cool, they were like, we are going to focus way too much about alchemy and how it works. Instead of it being a part of a show, it's going to be the whole show. It's sort of like how like when alternate history fiction forgets to tell a story and just is like describing a setting, I get kind of pissed off. I imagine Full Metal Alchemist gets better than that. But I think there's like this, like I watched a couple episodes, and I think there's like an episode where somebody like freezes a creek to stop, but it involved like a full description of how alchemy works for like the second time. And I'm like, okay, bruh. Like, I don't like. It's okay. You can describe alchemy once, and have it be part of the show, and you could do other things, but I don't know. That's sort of my thing with anime. One Punch Man. Thank you later. I've heard good things about One Punch Man. Maybe I should give that one a try. Because I've been told that even though it has, like, you know, the gimmick of being the guy who can kill anything with one punch, apparently it goes way beyond that. Ace Attorney shakes up quite often. Isn't Ace Attorney a video game? In the movie, they travel to our Earth and can't use alchemy to fight. Ooh, interesting. That's interesting. I wonder what that... Like, okay, here's an idea. Here's an example of an anime, kind of, that had a central gimmick, but it was a show that had the cool world building thing, but was able to be about more than that, and that is fucking Avatar. Avatar is, like, its big thing is the whole fucking, like, elemental bending, wuxia stuff. And it's a great piece of the thing. But the story is about more than just, like, they don't, like, twist the story into all these weird convolutions so that every episode has to have a bending-related thing in it. And everything is not solved with bending. And I think that is key and important, and I think that's why Avatar sticks out. But that's hard to go off of, because it's like saying, like, yeah, Avatar isn't even anime at the end. Yeah, that's true. But, like, it's also to say this doesn't live up to, like, one of the best TV shows ever made, so therefore I'm walking away. That's unfair, right? Like, yeah, like, I loved, yeah. Avatar: The Last Airbender was just fucking fantastic. Oh my god. Legend of Korra had a big mecha fight. Yeah, it did. It also had, like, a fucking kaiju fight at the end of season 2. And like sometimes Avatar leaned into it, and it usually did it to its service. Like, the huge fucking fight against Emperor Sozai at the end of Avatar is basically a Dragon Ball Z fight, right? But yeah. All right, guys, it is actually 2 o'clock. I actually managed to perk up a little bit. Thank you for giving me some energy. Apparently, I just needed to talk about anime for 20 minutes. So let's see. Let's go raid Rob Rousseau. He's good value. Legend of Korra was good expansion to the Avatar world building. That was pretty, yeah. And I've heard that the two guys who made those shows started their own production company, and they're going to be making some more, like, they're going to be making some more stuff. They're going to be making some more stuff in that world, and I'm pretty happy for it. Because they basically left the Netflix project. I don't know why, and I imagine because Netflix is sort of, like, on fire right now, that we're probably never going to see that live-action Avatar show they were promising. So the two creators went off and made their own made their own production studio, and the production studio is going to be entirely about making stuff in the world of The Last Airbender. And I'm like, okay, cool. Give me more shit in that universe with their storytelling. Thank you. Yes, I will take it. All right. We're gonna raid Rob Rousseau. Actually, fuck it. Let's just raid Kira chats. Why not? But yeah, this has been a great stream, everybody. I'll be back. Oh, okay. Only accepts raids from teammates and followed channels. Well, thank you, Kira. You just missed out on people. All right, let's get Rob Rousseau then. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I'll be back next week. And yeah, be excellent to each other or something.